I call this meeting of the Davenport Committee School District Board of Directors to order. One of our members, Director Gosa, will be late for this meeting. Director Potts, would you please read our priorities?
The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impact of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. And Director Mayfield, do you have the vision and mission statements available? Would you read them for us, please? No. The mission and vision statements.
No, I do not.
Oh, okay. Director Hayes, would you have it available?
I do have it.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Mayfield.
Our vision, education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what is? Our mission, to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Tate, we have a showcase.
Yes, the showcase tonight is Washington Elementary School. Diana Allen, principal, is here, so thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good evening to our president of the board, our rest of our board of directors, Superintendent Tate, and our audience. Again, I am Diana Allen, the principal at Washington Elementary School, and it says, learning together, achieving together. That is our vision statement. That's where we want to become. And I would like for anyone affiliated with Washington at this time, our parents, staff, and teachers, would you stand at this time? And if we can give 2 hand claps to our folks. Thank you. And then that's our other parent over there, and you can have a seat. And we just wanted to share with you about learning together, achieving together. And we're going to showcase today our GAP After School Launch Program. We're in transition with our Greater Achievement Program students. We went from a program that was during the school day to a program that is after school. And the launch program is what we're going to share with you this evening. Now, I went to the Prostart for the first time last week, and I know that we had some appetizers, a main course, and desserts. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the appetizer. Mr. Dan Shaw is going to give you the main course, and then our support paras will give you the dessert. And that's Michelle Kiles and Sharon McIntyre. As your appetizer, the launch skills that our students have been learning, and this is in the after-school program, they've been learning about application skills of our basic skills of our reading, our writing, and our thinking. Our critical thinking skills that our students have been learning, you can see to your bottom right-hand corner on the diagram there. And then also our launch skills also are dealing with our reasoning skills. I'm going to ask the rest of my team to come up. And Mr. Shaw is now going to give us the main course, which will give us more information about the launch program at Washington Elementary. You gotta put you right there. Just put that one.
Okay. Oh, okay, back it up. We want to go to previous. There we go. Launch areas of focus, the brain. We looked at parts of the brain injury, ways to protect the brain, our senses, and memory. One of the earliest activities we discussed was brain injury, specifically concussions, how they happen, and what parts of the brain can be affected. The students worked to write and video PSAs, public service announcements, to share with others the dangers of brain injury and how to prevent them. Parts of the brain. To help us learn the parts of the brain, we constructed a clay model using different colors to represent the frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital lobes. the cerebellum, the brainstem, and the spinal cord. How many of you can identify those in the picture? After learning the areas of the brain, it was time to learn the 5 senses and what areas of the brain they are associated with. We tested our senses, starting with our hearing and sight. We performed tasks and recorded our reactions. We also tried to identify what were in the mystery bags using our sense of smell and then touch. Memory. As if we weren't already enjoying the experience, it was time to play memory with cards. As you may notice, the look of concern on my face, the students weren't giving me any slack. I also noticed one of my students, who rarely shows emotion, completely open up and enjoy the experience. A testament to the power of the launch program can provide for our students.
In this program, we learned all about our senses. We used clay, as you saw in the picture, to make a model of our brain and the brain stem. We also learned together what part of your brain controls your memory, your balance, your touch, and even your speech. We held experiments for all of our senses. Mr. Shaw made this a fun class for all of us. Mrs. Kyles and I both learned a lot about our senses along with the kids. Is a great teacher and a very great, interesting program.
I always enjoy when learning is made fun. This class definitely challenged the children's mind, but it was an environment that was warm and exciting. Not only did we, as the supporting staff and the students, explore the parts of the brain, we learned that we learned about what parts of the brain makes us do what we do. We had many small group sessions where we assisted the children in making their own story of a child having a brain injury, such as while playing at the park and not wearing their helmet. So they were able to actually explore seeing their own friends. The children were able to use their senses using modeling clay, smelling items in a bag, touch by placing their hands in a bag and guessing what was inside, as once stated. But one major excitement was the card game, where one student who was very introverted, and I saw that from the beginning, as she played the game, she found her laugh. And she laughed very loud, and she kept laughing. And that just made everyone excited, and she also won. So she found her laugh, but she also found her memory.
So there you have it, folks. That is our meal. That's our showcase for the day. We've given you your appetizer, which are the types of skills that the launch focuses on, and then we gave you the main course, and then we gave you the testimonials with our support team, our paraeducators. A lot of times over the years that I've been here, we've had, our students here, and we've never had our paraeducators here. And I want to thank Dr. Tate, because he asked the principals, he said, what are we doing to make our support people feel a part of the school? And what better example than our paraeducators who work with our students, not only at recess, but in the classrooms and after school. So hopefully they've been a testament to the program. Any questions?
I imagine there are. Director Hayes.
A great presentation, but what exactly was in those bags?
Okay, go ahead.
There were some essential oils. There would be, like for the smells, I think one was orange, another was peppermint.
Lavender, and lemon.
Yeah.
So just smells.
And there was the touch bag that the kids had to reach in, but they couldn't look and see. So what were some of the items that you brought from home to put in your bag?
One was a little bit, it was a Christmas ornament, but it was a snowman, but it moved. And somebody said, "This is moving," and they had to guess it, and they actually did pretty well. Also, little balls. There was a whistle in there. Just a bunch of little household
Seashell?
things. Oh, a seashell that my son brought me back from spring break. Yeah, so just different things, and they did really well. And they had, the best part is he made them wait. On Thursday we did that, they had to wait till Monday to find out what was in the bag. So there was a little anticipation
Oh,
there.
a lot of anticipation. Okay, thank you.
Director DeSalvo.
So what, do you put all students through this?
That's a good question. No. Our GAP students, we've identified a certain number of students, and those students had the traditional type tutoring after school for our second and third quarter, and then this fourth quarter, we've been focusing on our launch project.
Okay.
And hopefully, from the district, we'll hear more about that in weeks to come. But, yeah.
I love it. I like that you're getting the students involved in something that they are taking to. It sounds like it's very interesting to them, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much. You know, we really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Next is a presentation, Superintendent Tate. Oh, before we get started, Mr. Maloney, would you mind maybe getting the fans to run? It might be a little warm in here. Superintendent Tate?
Thank you, Mr. President. Several years ago, I heard the term 180 zone, and I didn't know what that was. But as I learned more and more about what the 180 zone is and does, I realized what a wonderful attribute it is and asset it is for the community, and the great service that they do, not only for the schools, but for neighborhoods also. So tonight, we've asked Rusty Boroff to come and talk a little bit about the 180 zone. He's the founder and director. Thank you, Rusty.
Thank you, Dr. Tate, and thank you to the board for inviting me here. So, and I know there's a lot of good stuff on the agenda tonight, so I will make this quick, and if there's any questions, I'll take them. For you guys that don't know about 180, we kind of fly under the radar a little bit. We're homegrown right here in the Quad Cities. We're an 8-year-old organization, kind of started out of my story of homelessness and addiction and poverty and eventually incarceration. And so 8 years ago, we set out on a journey and created men's homes. And that's how we originally started and grown organically from that. So if you fast forward 8 years, there's 3 things we focus on: prevent, reach, and develop. I'll come back to prevent because that's what I'm going to talk about. But reach is community outreach. We're just reaching out to the communities, the jails, the prisons, some of the tougher areas of our community. Develop is our residential housing. This is probably what people most know us by, where we house men and women who are coming out of incarceration or coming out of addiction, and create a safe environment. And it's a 14-month program for those folks. And then we have our 180 enterprises. These are businesses we've created to employ all those people who are going through our program. And so we're teaching them different skills and trades to make them more employable. A couple years ago, 2016, we purchased the old St. Joseph campus, which includes Marquette Academy that was closed down. We have created and renovated that into an achievement center. And then we also have this old St. Joseph church that we've turned into a community center. So we're really into community development and building those relationships. As an organization, working with specifically Prevent, which includes Davenport schools along with some other school districts, what we do is we harness kind of the energy of over 350 volunteers every month and really call ourselves gap fillers. And so we work with our schools to find out what gaps are in those communities. And we break those down into 3 different areas that I'll touch base on: is building stable environments, building connected kids, and building faith foundations. And so when you look at the stable environments, and what I mean by that is things like our in-school food pantries. We have 6 in-school food pantries, including Washington, everything from Mid-City down to Monroe, Smart, Hayes, Jefferson. And then we have our family and school assistance. This is where we just mean the basic needs. So schools call us, and little Johnny, who's 2 years old, or in 2nd grade, is sleeping on the floor. And so what we do is we provide a bed to that family, or their refrigerator goes out. Just basic needs that people often take for granted. We house those at Marquette Academy, and we deliver those to those families that have those needs. I call ourselves gap fillers. Getting involved with the schools, some of the things I learned is the huge kind of need and borderline epidemic at times, things like lice treatment or bed bugs. And how's a kid going to learn if he's dealing with those things at home? And so we go out and we partner with Lice Clinics of America, and we provide lice treatment for those kids, heat treatment. We went and we bought a machine that we take to families' homes to heat treat their house for things like bed bugs or cockroaches or fleas or any types of pests. Those are things that aren't fun or attractive to talk about, but those are what the real needs and gaps are in the community. And so when we find things out like that, we want to be able to take care of it. I'll also partner with the schools for just things like, when the teacher moves to the next room, we provide volunteers and people to help assist that. We deep clean the schools. We do cleanup projects at the schools, landscape projects. Really, whenever the school has a need, they can call us as an organization, and hopefully we can take care of it. One of the new things that we've done, another gap, is affordable housing. So going to a lot of these meetings, I hear about affordable housing when it's one of the leading causes to kids. There's no reason why my buddy Keontae, who's in 4th grade, should move 3 or 4 different times in a school year because of affordable housing. And so what we do as an organization, one of our new programs is we buy or people donate homes to us in West Central City. We take these properties, use our enterprises, our businesses, to remodel these homes, and then we sell on contract back to these families at affordable price between $600 and $750. And it's usually a 4 to 15-year mortgage to really create home ownership, to stabilize not just the community, but also stabilize these kids' lives. And that is a partnership with the district because we rely on the schools to identify those families for us. We don't care about evictions or criminal record or any of that stuff. What we want to know is who's out there, who's really trying, who deserves a shot at some affordable housing in 4 to 15 years, come out owning a house debt-free. And so we want to be able to work and get those families that opportunity. Building connected kids, that's our athletics, our activities. This started with a friend of mine, TJ, who is a principal at Monroe, finding out that there was kids who just don't get the normal opportunities. And so we started a baseball team. I don't know if TJ remember our first baseball team. And he was really nice. He said, yeah, bring your kids up to a tournament that I'm playing in. And so we did that, and we played his team, and they beat us 25-0. But by the end of the year, these kids kept practicing. By that time, they were taking first, second place in these tournaments. But these are opportunities that these kids normally wouldn't get the opportunity to do. It's a partnership with Major League Baseball. We have over 100 kids every year that participate in 3 schools with us. We also do golf camp, basketball, soccer camp, photography club. Once again, just creating opportunities for these kids that maybe they normally wouldn't have. And then this summer we taken over 55 students to a week-long camp as well. Opportunity for All, which is a mini grant program, really just levels the playing field for some of the lower income families. If little Michael, who's 12 years old, wants to participate in junior achievement or junior theater, and the only reason why he doesn't get to participate is because he can't afford the $175. What we want to be able to do is to take care of that and provide that kid that opportunity. And so that's what Opportunity for All is. It's a partnership with the foundation here in Davenport Schools. And then building faith foundations. This is Quest that happens in a whole lot of schools. There's 600 some kids that participate in this after school. Then our West End initiative, which is kind of how we originally started. It happens at Monroe Elementary every Saturday morning. Been doing it for years, and it's a hot meal opportunity for kids. There's some crafts and music, and just once again an opportunity to build relationships, and that's what we want to do. We want to build relationships with these families. The last thing I'll talk about before you guys have any questions is we recently came out with an app. You can it's not even public yet. I mean, anyone can get it. This is the first group I ever talked to. But if you go to your app store and you search 180, it pulls up our app. And what we've done is we've created a find a resource. And what this does in the end is it puts all the resources, community resources, at your fingertips. So it could be clothing, meal sites, food pantries, healthcare, human service, education, employment prep, shelter, substance abuse, counseling, mental health. All you have to do is you have to click whatever category you want. You pinpoint your location, and it brings all the locations up around you. You simply click on the dot, and it'll tell you what that place is. And so you can click on 180, 14-month program, and it walks you through the steps how to apply for that program. Same thing with your food pantries, your human services needs. So this is something, it's free to the community. Literally all they do is search 180, and within seconds you have every resource that you need at your fingertips. And we update this every month, working with these community resources to make sure that this is up to date. So no longer are we having to rely on PDFs or talking to somebody on a phone trying to explain to them how to get to the food pantry at the Achievement Center, wherever it might be. Now it's literally right in their fingertips, and anybody can access it. So any questions that you guys have for me? That was a whole lot of information in a few minutes. So.
Any questions or comments? Director Beck.
Forgive my voice. I've been kind of sick, but you do a lot.
We do a lot.
That is a lot of stuff. All amazing, really fantastic. This is sort of a pointed question, but I know you guys had a fire recently.
Yeah.
How is that restoration coming?
It's good. It's done. We were able to get the women back there. We had a fire at our women's facility maybe a month and a half ago, displaced all our women. And so we were able to get those women back in there within a week. And the house is all put back together. Looks better than it ever has. So
great.
So thank you for asking.
Yeah. So my other question was, have you been doing this long enough that you've been able to sort of see kids you were working with 8 years ago, and then where are they now?
Yeah.
Do you have sort of a sense of what kinds of impacts you've been having on these kids?
Yeah, no, there's no question. And we've really been doing the prevent thing for 4 to 5 years. And so, I'll use my initial baseball team as an example. 15 kids, and I have a relationship with all those kids, all those families to this day, 4 years later. And, I'm still invited to their birthday parties. I'm still, all these kids who had never played baseball before, now they're all part of things like Little League, or they're part of travel ball. And I'm confident that never would have happened if they never had that first experience, because they couldn't, they didn't have the ball, they didn't know if they were left or right-handed. I mean, it was bad, but when they learned the game and they got a passion for it, and their family saw that their kid, who maybe was usually in trouble, now has a positive impact in his life. So I just use that baseball as a personal experience that I can attest to. But there literally are hundreds of kids that we've built that relationship with that I know are much better off today. And the food pantries and literally, hundreds of kids every week that we're able to reach through those things. But what it comes down to is just relationships. It's those 350 volunteers every month, giving them, the food pantry is just a resource to build a relationship with that family and invest in that family. And that's where that change comes from.
Okay, thanks.
Superintendent Tate.
Thank you. I have a letter here from Randy Bakes, the Chief Marketing Officer at Loretta Sciences. At Loretta Sciences, headquarters of the world's largest network of lice removal professionals, we have the opportunity to review a multitude of data pertaining to the trends, patterns, demographics, science, and economics of head lice removal. It is with great pleasure that Loretta Sciences therefore commends and recognizes 180 with our 2018 Community Caring Award. We also laud them as a model and an example for other churches and social organizations to follow. We wish 180 the greatest success as they continue to transform the Quad Cities one life at a time.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
Director DeSalvo.
I would just like to thank you for what you're doing for our community. I had the opportunity to tour your facility about a year ago with the United Way group, and you're doing amazing things. Your story is amazing in itself, those that have heard it. But I think you started saying that you're kind of a quiet, kept secret or something, and And I think these are the stories that everybody needs to hear, and we need to shout this, not keep it quiet and best kept secret, because you're really changing lives and you're changing our community, and we are very grateful to you for that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And our sole goal is to support Davenport schools and to support those families. So any way we can do that, we'll do it.
Director Hayes.
I too thank you for your partnership with the schools. One question I had with the housing program, are you able to keep up with the supply and demand? How has that worked for the families?
Yeah, we break our housing into a few different categories. When we talk about residential housing, which I don't think your question is targeted towards that. That's about a 19-month waiting list just to interview people to get them into our residential 14-month program. So and we have 30 or 40 spots, so we have very low turnover, high success rate on that, which is the reason for the long wait list. When we talk about affordable housing, I mean, there are, when I asked Madison Elementary, give me some names, there was a whole list of names. And we started that process of seeing, okay, who can afford $600 or $750, because it does cost some money. We want them to have some skin in the game. One of the things we're working with is hopefully a city partnership. We can do as many houses as possible. What it takes is the capital to get these homes. On average, we're buying homes right now between $15,000 and $25,000, and we're putting about $30,000 into them each home. So if we can get these houses donated to us or sold even cheaper than that, the more homes that we can do. And the cool thing about it, A, we're cleaning up the neighborhoods. B, we're creating home ownership, which helps people take pride in the neighborhood. 3, we're employing people who are unemployable by doing it. And so it's a win-win for everybody, and not to mention the family that gets the house. Right. We don't make any money off it. That's not what we're in the business for. And so so there is quite a few families that are on this list, and we will do our best to keep up with it. And one of the things that helps with that is when we get these homes a little cheaper or donated.
Thank you.
Good question.
Director Mayfield.
Yes. First of all, I'm amazed at all the services that you offer. I know it takes a lot of dedicated people to make that happen.
It does.
But I was curious about you. You said the housing is a new program.
Mm-hmm.
How long has it existed?
We first got our first house, which was on Charlotte, 3 or 4 months ago. So it's
something that's just started.
Yep,
basically.
We have done affordable housing for quite a while, but we have never used families from Davenport schools. So the affordable housing concept is not new. We've been doing that. Our first one was on Bridge 4 years ago, 5 years. But working with Davenport schools in that role, that has only been 3 or 4 months.
There is, by the city, some talk of replenishing houses in the central city.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they will partner with you to make some of those houses available.
I hope so, too.
Many of those houses have been vacated.
Yep.
And, of course, when people don't have places to live, they have to go where the housing's at.
Mm-hmm.
And the housing is not down here
Yep.
in this area.
Yep.
We've had that problem going on for at least 15 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at our hotels, which you probably have,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that there's many people
Yep.
living in hotels because they can't find proper housing.
Yep.
So I applaud your group program for what you're trying to accomplish, and hope I can be of assistance in the future.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you
you.
very much, Rusty. Nice presentation. Superintendent Tate, are there any student board reports?
I don't see any, unless Linda Cook would like to make a report.
See a student?
Okay, then there are none.
Okay, thank you. Are there any board reports? Director Hayes.
I've actually had a busy few weeks here. I went to the 10-20-year employee recognition celebration I was able to attend a middle school track meet at Brady Stadium. However, I cheated. I didn't stay long because it was way too cold out. I had a visit with Garfield for Grandparents or Generation Day, where grandparents were invited to attend. I visited Sudlow and was able to participate, I went through the lunch program and even ate lunch there. Some of the employees thought I was pretty brave, but it wasn't bad. It was okay. And I had a visit at Wood Junior High, which I did not realize the school was as nice as it is. Wood is a very beautiful campus with the outdoor classroom, and they have gardening that they do there, some indoor gardening that's on some type of contraption on the wall where they were growing thyme and other different things there, and then they had an outdoor one. So I really enjoyed my visits this past week.
Any other board reports? There were some board members that went to Prostart, and I thought you were going to mention that as well. Okay, Director Beck.
Sorry, I do so many things. I forgot that was since the last meeting. I had the chance to attend the Prostart Banquet, Taste of Prostart with Director Hayes and Director Johansson was there. And the food was amazing. The presentations were amazing. And what those kids have been able to do, actually get into kitchens with chefs, is really impressive. So it's a fantastic program. And I was very full by the time I left. And some excellent stuff at the silent auction as well.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to communications. Director Hayes, would you please read our upcoming events?
I'll be happy to. On April 24th, which is tomorrow, the retirement dinner, 6 to 7 is social hour, 7 p.m. dinner at Radisson Davenport. April 26th, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. is a student showcase at Central High School Performing Arts Center. May 1st is meeting with school board and city leadership from 4:45 to 6 p.m. at the Davenport, I want to say that's Davenport Police Community Room at 416 North Harrison Street in Davenport. On May 2nd at 4 p.m., the Policy Committee meeting in ASC Executive Board Room. May 7th, 5:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole meeting in ASC Jim Hester Board Room. May 14th at 6 p.m., regular board meeting, ASC Jim Hester Board Room. On May 28th, Monday, we're closed for the holiday. May 29th, Tuesday, regular board meeting will be held here in the ASC Jim Hester Board Room. On May 30th at 7 p.m. is Mid-City graduation at Central High School Performing Arts Center. Vision 2020 public forums have been scheduled for the following dates. Wednesday, May 9th from 6 to 7 p.m. at Central High School, Kaler Auditorium. Tuesday, June 12th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at West High School Auditorium. And Wednesday, September 12th from 6 to 7:30 at North High School Auditorium. If you can also share your thoughts and questions and concerns. There's feedback, but there's not any more to it?
Well, if you go on the board docs.
Okay. Okay.
And that's available to the public.
That's open to the public on board docs. Okay.
All right.
President Johansson,
Excuse me. Yes,
can
Director
I add
DeSalvo.
something to that?
Excuse me?
Can I add something to the calendar of events? If I don't do it now, it will be almost too late.
I suppose it's something that should be on here. I mean, go ahead.
May 10th, the dual grad students will graduate from Scott Community College at 6 p.m. at the Tax Slayer Center in Moline.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. Okay, next is open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against any individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. So it looks like we have about 5 of them. I'll allow 3 minutes apiece. And I'll just read them off, and you can come in up in that order and give us your name and address at the microphone. First is Michelle Brown. After that will be Marguerite Daesil, followed by Adam Brown, Kristen Rose, and Tyler Weger. We'll go ahead and start.
Hello. My name is Michelle Brown, and this year is my second year teaching at SMART.
Michelle, I need your address too.
Okay. It's 219 East 4th Street in DeWitt, Iowa.
Okay, thank you.
I started my first year with the Davenport district at J.B. Young the year it closed. At the beginning of this year, we had the opportunity to sign this card. It says, every member of the DCSD team is responsible for the success of all, yes, all is in capital letters, of our students. And on the other side, it reads, I am accountable. This is why we are here, to ensure that our students are able to obtain social and academic success. Vision 2020 sounds so progressive and innovative. However, we know that history has a way of repeating itself. I grew up in Davenport, went to Johnson Elementary, Williams Junior High, and Davenport West. My husband went to mostly private schools. However, he was a smart tornado with Billy Argo, and we had this eagle/tornado thing going on. But my grandfather was born on the other side of the tunnel, before there was a tunnel, and attended West Intermediate, which is now SMART. As Davenport population was leaving and struggling during the late 70s and 80s, the school board ignored the vote not to have a new high school. And then in 2002, my beloved Johnson Elementary was closed. I started my teaching degree and moved my family to another district because I did not want my kids to attend, nor did I want to teach at a Davenport school. And while we reside out of district, we own property in Davenport, and by divine providence has led me to teach in Davenport schools. Now, whatever it takes was the first thing Dr. Tate said to the new hires in August 2015. I was skeptical. I was going to be teaching at J.B. Young its closing years, and we have all seen the movies, Freedom Riders, Coach Carter, Dangerous Minds. Those were dramatizations, and they had nothing on what was going on in this K-8 building. But what I found was this unbelievable support system among the staff, amazing teachers who stood and built a rapport with students who seemed unreachable. I remember sitting in Marty Schultz's class thinking, I want to take this class. I want teachers like this for my kids. And I also saw resilient kids full of potential and fantastic ideas. I saw Dr. Tate visiting classrooms and asking questions and input for transition ideas. I began to believe whatever it takes. And on a side note, what Dr. Tate has risked in the name of equitable student funding solidifies my belief in that he will do whatever it takes. While all this was going on, the threat of JB closing for our students was crushing and affected them deeply, academically, socially, psychologically, and it wore on staff. Rumors that SMART was even going to be worse than J.B. Young were rampant, and I bawled the night that I was assigned to SMART. And my fears were totally unwarranted. Frankel SMART is the center of this incredible, supportive, strong community. We build up what others are determined to keep and look down upon. And early this year, We had a professional development on being culturally responsive. We have been sent strategies and ideas on how to incorporate this into our instruction. Frank L. Smart staff are masters of this, and we have an idea to take it even further. Keep our neighborhood schools open. Our students are valuable, and we are accountable, and we will do whatever it takes to make sure that they achieve their success. Look into the past. We are more than what we have become, and hindsight is only 2020.
Thank you, Michelle. Next is Marguerite Daesil.
Dear board members, sorry. I currently teach at Smart Intermediate, but I come to you today not as a district employee.
Excuse me, Marguerite, I'm sorry to interrupt. I need your name and address.
Oh, sorry,
before you
Marguerite Daesil, 3512 38th Street, Rock Island, Illinois.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Nope, you're fine. I currently teach at Smart Intermediate, but I come to you today not as a district employee, but as a prospective parent in your district. Since my husband and I moved back to the Quad Cities, we knew that we would always end up living in the city where I taught, so our children would be on the same school schedule as myself. I will be having 3 children that should be attending Davenport schools. I know the amazing things going on in the district, but that's not the message that we are seeing on the news. Lately, the only message I see is of inconvenient smart times, school closing, and mixed messages about what we value as a district. I come from a low-income family, and my school was my safe haven. I went to school with kids that were dealing with the same issues as me, and teachers and staff that always felt more like family than adults I just happened to encounter. I desperately want this experience for my children. We plan on building a house south of Locust, and currently my schools that my children would attend would be Madison Elementary and Smart Intermediate. In a district that's being put in a tough place with budget, is public school really the best choice for my children, especially when mom and dad decide to build in an up-and-coming area? I'm currently having to have conversations with my students at Smart about why their school's just not good enough. The progress that we made these last couple of years with our first responders and referral data being drastically down and our focus turning back finally to our academics may not be enough to save our community. I am currently watching teachers that have devoted their entire lives to Smart being devastated because they have no other choice but to leave the school before the vote. It's hard enough having these conversations with colleagues and students, but I will not have these conversations with my young girls about why their school's just not good enough. My parents worked hard to keep me in the same house so I wouldn't have to move schools. And my home and my school would always be safe, and I want that experience for my children. I know a lot of the unfair decisions are coming from the state and are the reasons for a possible school closing, but I urge the school board to try to find other alternatives. Parents like me that have young families are starting to plant roots where our kids can go to neighborhood schools. What are we telling prospective parents that already live in Davenport or could possibly move to Davenport with inconvenient start times and the always uncertainty of a school closing? My husband and I are fortunate enough that I can choose to send my daughters to private school. But as a teacher in the district, it kills me to think that the place that I work is too unpredictable for my own children. However, if the choice has to be work or family, my choice will always be the stability of my family. So when you're making decisions, please consider the message that you are sending not just to Davenport residents, but to all Quad City residents. Are we trying to stop the dropping enrollment? Are we telling our city that it's too unstable and maybe a different city would be a better alternative for their children? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marguerite. Next is Adam Brown.
Hello, my name is Adam Brown. I reside at 1031 North Pine Street, about 6 blocks from Smart Intermediate. I have been teaching at Smart, and this is my second year now, as I'm a new teacher because I was a stay-at-home father. But as a teacher and a parent, I'm worried about what will happen to the neighborhood if our school is to close. With a quick search of other cities that have had to close schools, a plethora of information is easily found. In Michigan, they did a documentary about what has happened when the schools closed. The Urban Institute did research on the effects of closing schools. The information found is depressing, to say the least. I have no reason to believe that you have not done any research of your own or already understand what closing a school can do to a neighborhood. But the first thing mentioned in both the articles that I read was that neighborhoods lose people. What happens to our district numbers if our neighborhoods get smaller? Wouldn't our district enrollment also continue to get smaller? They mentioned that there are empty houses and boardings built up in these neighborhoods that lost the schools. The other major point that the Urban Institute mentions is that black and poor schools are disproportionately affected. With being the only Title I intermediate school, we seem to fit that bill as well. Why are these schools more highly affected? And why is it our school that is being chosen at this point? Now I'm done with some statistics, and I'd like to give you a little bit of a story about myself and how that affects the school as well. So I also grew up in the west end of Davenport. I understand the poverty that is in this location. I attended Roosevelt Elementary School, then Hayes, Smart, and graduated from West. When I was in high school, my mother, who was an employee of Hy-Vee down on Rockingham, and still is, received a call from Lynn Chapman. She was a secretary at Roosevelt Elementary School. The call was about 2 students that attended Roosevelt. They had lost their mother recently, and their father had very little for them for Christmas. The current date was only a few days before Christmas. We, as a family, got a bunch of things together. My mom dressed up as Mrs. Claus, and I, as a 14-year-old, dressed up as Santa. We delivered everything that we had gotten, including a Christmas tree, presents, and lights, to this family. But if you read all of this and listen to it, the hero of this story is not myself or my mom or Hy-Vee that donated the tree, but the hero is Lynn Chapman. She was the head secretary at Roosevelt for years. She was there when I attended, and we knew her very well. She did not just know my family, though. She knew all the students' family. She was aware of what was going on in the lives of each student in that building. I realized that it was only K through 3, but she was also the only secretary working there. I still see Lynn Chapman occasionally, and every time I do, I always say hello and talk to her. No matter what mood I was in before, when I speak to her, I leave in a better mood. She is one of the most caring people I've ever met. I do not get to see Lynn as often as I would like, but there are 3 women who remind me of her that I get the privilege of seeing on a regular basis. Mrs. Shannon, Mrs. Deb, and Mrs. Pam. They're the secretaries at Smart Intermediate School. And that's as the students call them, sorry. They're the ladies who work in the office. When we speak with them, you know that no matter what happens to these kids, they are the most important thing. They know things about the students that we as teachers can only try and get out of them. They know about their home life. They know when something has happened that is abnormal. Just like the day that just before Christmas when I was 14 and Lynn knew about her students, these incredible ladies know and care about ours.
Hey, Adam, excuse me, you're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay, I'm just about done. Being in the neighborhood and being close to what these students see gives us a unique perspective on what life is like in the area. We may not live the same life or have the same struggles, but we know that the school matters. We know that because we are where we are and can help the students. We all try to be like Lynn Chapman, and some of us would be lost if this school closes. Some of these students will be lost as well, but after all means all.
Thank you, Adam. Next is Kristen Rose.
Hello, Kristen Rose, 2411 Fulton Avenue, Davenport. I'll give Adam some of my time. I'll be brief. My reason for speaking today concerns the purchase of the Ground Transportation Center for $2 million for the Creative Arts Academy. How is this under consideration when closing a geographically necessary school is being considered? It seems irresponsible that the district would displace hundreds of students south of Locust, removing their neighborhood school and adding to their existing disadvantages, to put millions into a program that serves a small subset of students. It is the district's responsibility to provide easy access to education for all students. Will the students at SMART feel valued when they find out the school where they are to receive their basic education is being closed, but a small district program receives millions? Additionally, today's Quad City Times article says that the savings from closing a school comes from personnel, not the building. How can this be when staff at a closing school are guaranteed a job elsewhere, even if positions have to be created for them? The Vision 2020 proposal also gives the upgrade costs needed for Monroe as a reason for its closure as a school building. Please consider how it will look to close a school in a low-income neighborhood because of budget concerns, yet funnel millions of dollars into a program that serves a very, very small portion of the Davenport students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kristen. And Tyler.
Hi, Tyler Weger, 4842 Jersey Ridge Road, Davenport. This is real quick and easy. Last week, or the last meeting, we voted on the timeline for approving a school that that included 3 public forums, and then an amendment was added. There's a little bit of confusion as to whether one of those forums was going to be moved to September or whether an additional one was going to be added. And the minutes say that an additional one would be added. So I'd just like some clarification when it comes to the approval of the minutes, if we could do that.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Tyler. Tyler, I got engaged in listening to you. Did you give us your name and address? Yes. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for coming to speak, and it's always important. We do appreciate you're bringing these to our attention, and I wanted to comment also that those of you that have those really nice shirts, that's pretty cool. So thank you for coming. We'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
I would like to clarify the minutes as per Tyler's comments. What meeting was it?
That was the regular meeting on April 9th.
Okay.
It's in the amendment for
So there's some confusion as to whether we added a forum or we just shifted the third forum for Vision 2020.
Well, the forum dates were on them.
Right.
There's 3 of them scheduled.
And there were 3 scheduled initially, right? And we changed one.
No,
there were 2 scheduled. Okay. We added a forum, so there was a third one. There were originally 2 scheduled.
September.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, we're ready to call the vote, Director Gosa, on the consent agenda. You weren't here when we had the motion. I'm going to go ahead and call the vote without asking you to participate. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. And the reason I didn't call on Director Gosa was just that he hadn't been here during the original motion. Excuse me, he is here now and will be participating with the rest of the meeting. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the administration's adoption for the bills from the bill listing periods of April 5th, 2018 through April 18th, 2018. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of April 5th, 2018 through April 18th, 2018.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Potts? Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent report.
Thank you. I'd like to read an article from the Wilson Elementary School website. Nicole Hines, a kindergarten student at Wilson Elementary, was inspired to raise money to help her fellow Little Falcons. Nicole sold her bike and saved her allowance in order to bring the money to the staff that run the cafeteria. Nicole specifically requested the money be put in the students' lunch accounts that did not have money in them or were behind in paying their lunch balances. Nicole's spirit and gesture in inspiring her peers to do the same as well, soaring to help her classmates is simply amazing. And I think QC Times may be doing something on that. We may see it tomorrow. I have an email from Michael Madsen, Sergeant Major Madsen, with the Central Reserve Officer Training Corps. Attention Central, a huge congratulations goes out to the entire Army JROTC Blue Devil Battalion as they achieved the highest accreditation rating possible. This is from an inspection that comes from a people who are picked nationally. The cadets are now an honor unit with distinction. They are also a Gold Star program. This accreditation level is only given to the very top programs in the nation. Last Tuesday, 15 of the district leaders went to a tabletop exercise at Scott County Emergency Management. This is part of our security plans, and it was a 3-hour tabletop where they presented scenarios to us, and then we talked through what our response would be. And from that, we came away with a list of things we need to work on, to tweak, and to think about. So it was a productive day for us. That's all.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action. First is a public hearing and approval of plans and specifications for restroom renovations. May I have a motion on the approval of the plans and specifications for the Adams and Jackson restroom remodel project?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board approve the plans and specifications for the Adams and Jackson restroom remodel project.
Thank you. Is there a second? We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications for Adams and Jackson restroom remodel project as published in the Quad City Times on Friday, April 14th, 2018. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director Hayes.
This is probably a Mr. Maloney question. What are gang sinks?
Gang sinks, ma'am, would be one sink with multiple faucets.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts. Yes. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I have a motion regarding approval for the amendment to the Eastern Iowa Community College lease.
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the amendments to the EICC lease as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Have we had legal staff look at the lease? I mean, is this a normal lease?
Yes, we have, Dick Davidson is the attorney for both of us, in fact, so he went back and forth. The confusion here was that EICC thought that this is the way it'd be written. Mr. Davidson gave us to us to approve first, so that's the change.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Hayes.
So is this just kind of, to recap, that basically we will not be responsible for anything over $500 per incident?
No, the opposite. We will be responsible. It was initially written so that we wouldn't, but now we're responsible for the maintenance. Again, this is the normal way that a lease is written. That's the way the expectation was, and I think Mr. Davidson just perhaps got confused since he had both of us for it. So, yes. Is that correct? Okay.
Director Mayfield.
I'm not sure I read that correctly. Does that mean the roof and other main appliances such as heating utensils, are we
would be responsible for
replace?
We would be responsible for repair or maintenance of the equipment in the building, including the HVAC equipment, the plumbing equipment. All of the HVAC equipment was renovated about 2 years ago in the building, so it's basically brand new. EICC will remain responsible for the structure of the building, the roof, the underlying infrastructure, but not the equipment.
Any other discussion? I'm curious on that comment. Who makes a determination what needs to be done?
Who makes
in terms of, you know, different people maintain things differently. Is there like a level of quality of maintenance? I just don't know how you would do something like that.
Well, it would be one of the normal and customary standards of care would be the requirement on us.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of an intergovernmental 28D agreement with the City of Davenport?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board approve the intergovernmental 28D agreement with the City of Davenport for assignments of Davenport Community School District Police Liaison and West School Resources Officer as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I didn't catch that. Who was it? Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
We have an agreement, and this is just renewing an existing agreement?
It is, and Mr. Scott, there any changes at all in this from previous years?
No, it's the exact same.
And the price is this, price is the same too?
Well, there's an increase in price just because of annual increases.
Because of what? I didn't hear that.
So there's additional costs just because of the salaries of the employees.
Yeah, go ahead, Director DeSalvo.
And what did we pay last year? That's okay.
No, I do not know. They're on a, again, we have contracted services, so it's through the.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Mayfield.
How many officers are we talking about for that amount? And is that a increase in officers or a decrease from last year? And as to what schools that they're actually placed at, I know it's of great concern, security, and it'd be nice to know just what schools are now able to take advantage of that opportunity to have security.
I believe what you're discussing this evening is our current officers that we have, Mr. Nyrink, and then Officer Carter, who is stationed at West High School.
So are we talking 2 officers?
Correct. The third officer that it's located at Central High School is given to us free of charge from the city. That's our 3 officers. We have temporary officers, but that's not what we're talking about here. And we have 2 additional SRO officers coming on staff next year, but that's not part of this.
Yeah, I was just asking what this 263,000 represents
It's
as
just
far
for-
as cost to the district and
It's
how
for our
many
district
people.
SRO and
So
then also West
basically,
High School.
It's 2 people.
Correct.
Okay.
And I say that in kind, the city is then providing us a third officer. So I look at that as we are getting 3 officers for that cost. If that makes sense. But the contract's only for 2 people.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts. Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of payment for additional services?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board approve the payment for additional services for Larison and Associates Architect for $349,903.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Director Hayes.
Just for clarity, once we do this, we're all done.
Yes, this would settle the claim for additional services. There are, I believe, something on the order of $7,000 remaining on payment of the original contract that is still outstanding. This was the claim for additional services that was negotiated down from $479,000 to $349,000 and change, and that will settle all claims, and that I believe is the there are no outstanding change orders, no other costs associated with Central High School pool and auditorium.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts. Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
No.
Director Beck.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of change order for a Sudlow secure entrance?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board approve the change order for Precision Builders, Inc. in the amount of $64,322.86.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Mr. Maloney, can you explain how, if I'm reading this right, the project estimated budget was $700,000, and to date, our change orders put us at 1.7 million. How did we go over by $1 million?
The original project budget for the secure entry addition only was $700,000. In order to do the addition to the building, the city required us to upgrade the entire fire sprinkler system for the entire building. That was about $760,000. That got us up to about $1.4 million. In December, because of upcoming changes in the energy incentive program with Mid-American, you approved a change order for about $200,000 to redo all of the lights to convert the entire lighting system in the building to LEDs. That got us up to about a little over 1.5 million, and then there were a number of other minor changes, such as you see here. Additional sprinkler heads is again part of the fire code requirement and so forth. There were a number of other things that we encountered during the course of the project that were previous change orders. One of the things I would point out is that the bus lane project was, I forget the exact numbers, but several $100,000 under budget, and that was the source of funds to supplement the secure entry addition. So the primary additional cost was the requirement to install fire sprinkler system throughout the building that previously had only partial.
So, and I'm obviously not familiar with the construction business, but when we have an architect come in and do these designs, wouldn't the city be involved? I mean, why do these things happen after we've gone in with a project and we have an approved budget, and then the city swoops in at the last minute and says, oh, hey, you have to do this, by the way? I don't understand how that happens.
The way that happens is we schedule a meeting with the city, with the building official and the fire marshal early on in the design process. We start out with a board approval for a project and a budget, in this case that anticipated only the construction of the secure entry addition. Once we begin work on that design, we meet with the building official, the fire marshal, and this is with all of our projects, and discuss with them what we're doing, and then they tell us what code requirements they're going to impose, and there's often something of a negotiation between we and they, with us trying to manage costs and so forth. And from time to time, and this was one of those times, the requirement was you may not build the secure entry addition unless you install and upgrade fire sprinklers in the entire building to meet the current fire code.
Director DeSalvo.
It just seems off to me that we wouldn't do that earlier on in the process, knowing that they could come in and put requirements on us so that we aren't having to do, change orders to add to these things. Couldn't that process happen before we approve a budget for a project?
We try to do that, and often, depending upon the square footage of the addition, you're very close to the borderline of whether or not it will trigger additional code upgrades. We had a similar discussion, recall, with our renovation at J.B. Young over ADA costs, and we incurred a good amount of additional cost for ADA and other code compliance. There were some fire sprinkler things as well at J.B. Young. We attempt to anticipate when additional code requirements might be triggered and get that into the budget as early as possible, and from time to time it's close and we think we're going to not be required, as in this case, to upgrade the entire fire sprinkler system, and it turned out that was one of the times when the city was not as generous as we hoped.
Thank you.
Ralph. I'm getting to Everybody, hang on.
Well,
Director Gosa.
Gotta see you looking.
Do they have to pull permits to do work on our buildings? Yes. So when they pull the permit, you have to take the prints down and show them what you're doing, because that's what your permit's based on. So they should be able to tell us right then and there that this is, you got to do this. So we should know this ahead of time. These code meetings, Director Gosa, occur long before permits are pulled. Permits are not pulled Right, but you until can't we've build the actually thing unless issued you a have the contract. permission to do it. Permits are not pulled until after Yeah. we've issued a contract to the building contractor, to the general contractor. So the code requirements meetings and getting those costs understood and into the plans occur months before permits are pulled. I don't know, this is definitely different than I've ever done. Normally, you have to take the prints to them, tell them what you're doing before you even get permission to do it. It seems like we do a lot of backtracking, a lot. It costs us a lot of extra money.
Director Mayfield.
Yes, Ralph, I don't want you to think that I'm trying to get undue attention, but I didn't think you were looking this way, is why I called your name.
That's okay. I knew that
Time, he
there,
didn't have his hand up when I was waving.
but he had earlier.
But anyway, that doesn't make any difference. With the ADA, you mentioned there was a cost overrun with that, or unknown cost, I'm not sure which it was.
There were some additional costs beyond that which we had hoped we would incur.
Because with ADA, when the building plan is submitted to the city, don't they have a entity that looks over your plans for ADA?
Yes.
It says whether it's sufficient or not?
Yes, they do.
So there's a cost incurred after that, after the city says this plan is okay by the ADA standards, that you're incurring more cost after they tell you that?
In the instant case at J.B. Young, there were several toilet rooms that had been renovated in the past 10 years or so to meet the current standard at that time. The standard after that was changed to require greater clearances and so forth. And we had argued that we believed that the compliance with the earlier standard should be adequate and provided adequate accessibility, and the Civil Rights Commission insisted that no, you must meet specifically the current code requirements. That created the need for a number of different design solutions, both toilet rooms and entry doors that created additional cost to the project that we didn't think was really necessary, but was required upon plan review.
So if I understand this, the city did not give you the appropriate information to fit what you were building today, that they were basing it on the past rather than today. And I don't know what entity, whether it was civil rights or some other department down there, that said it has to comply with the standards today. With most businesses, if you're reconstructing it, then you have to comply with what today is the standard, not what was in the past. And so you may have been misled a little bit if you're saying that the city said that the past standards were okay when you were reconstructing.
No, I don't think the city misled us. It is the Office of Civil Rights, the Civil Rights Commission.
That misled you?
No, they did not mislead us. They came out, walked the building with us, and pointed out that a number of the previous improvements no longer complied with the current code, therefore must be upgraded. We were making an argument that they provided adequate accessibility, that most of us, including the disabled community, wouldn't know the difference. I mean, quite literally, because some of these have to do with clearances next to doors and things like that, that most mobility impaired people know how to navigate. And we thought that the compliance with the earlier standard should have been adequate. The Civil Rights Commission disagreed with us, and therefore we had to do a number of things that created additional costs to comply with the current code.
So the school district has a specialist that specializes in ADA compliance, because you're saying we thought that what was done before was adequate, and we may have an expert in the Davenport schools that decides that. Otherwise, don't we take it to the city? Or, and civil rights is part of the city.
Yes.
To make sure that the plan is adequate, so we don't be building the same thing 2 or 3 times, but get it done right the first time.
That's exactly what we did. And we rely largely on our architect. We do not have an ADA specialist per se in the district. I and our project managers have some training in ADA compliance with facilities, but it's a combination of our architect, our staff, and a discussion with the building official and ultimately with the Civil Rights Commission staff, where we attempt to negotiate what we think is fair, equitable, and complete access for everyone, and avoid any unnecessary costs.
Sir, we understand civil rights only intercedes if the city asked it to. Meaning ordinarily, the city determines that. They have people that have permits, that issue permits. And city right and civil rights will review it. Something that has happened even recently is the city actually reviews many of these things themselves and not necessarily civil rights. But when asked, the civil rights will review it.
The Civil Rights Commission staff reviews building plans for ADA compliance. When we submit building plans to the city for plan review prior to permitting, they are routed to the Civil Rights Office, and they review
Yes.
the plans for ADA compliance. The Civil Rights staff, in this case, met with us multiple times, and we went over all of the requirements in some detail in order to get those into the plans that were actually submitted for permits and the plans that were actually bid.
Excuse me, I've got to interrupt a little bit.
Sure.
Because it feels like we may be adrift from the motion that's on the table. Does the motion on the table have anything to do with civil rights or ADA?
I think not.
Okay, so I just want to be careful because we're getting into quite a bit of extra material that I think isn't probably relevant to this, which is the approval of the change order for the Sudlow secure entrance. So I just wanted to verify that. Go ahead, Director Mayfield.
And my reason for asking, because it was brought up by him, not because I interjected civil rights. He was mentioning as to why there were changes and it cost more. And it sounded like civil rights was part of that cost. So I was trying to find out if it's the city that determined that or civil rights, whether they got the plan ahead of time and told them what needed to be complied with, or after they did their estimating, then they took it to civil rights, and civil rights says you have to comply here. So anyway, I was just
Okay.
trying to get an understanding of,
Oh, no, I understand,
of
but
what he was.
But can you clarify, Mr. Maloney, that there is nothing about civil rights or ADA in this particular project?
In this particular change order, there are no ADA costs and no association with Civil Rights
Okay.
Commission.
And they are city issues. I think to
The
clarify.
Civil Rights Commission is an office of the city, they're city employees.
I know the Civil Rights Commission is, but with respect to this project, it's the city and it was the fire department. It was not ADA or civil rights. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to clarify that.
Only because it was mentioned is
But
why I asked.
it's okay. It's okay. I just didn't want to
well,
go
thank
too
you.
far adrift.
Appreciate that.
Director Hayes.
It's, you said due to the city and the fire department is the reason for this change?
Yes, the fire sprinkler change was a requirement of the fire marshal.
Okay, so explain to me how the TV tilt mount, the ice maker kit, and the refrigerator fit in.
Those were equipment that go into the principal's office area in the addition. The secure entry addition includes a new reception area, a workroom, principal's office, vice principal's office, conference room, and that equipment is in the principal's office area. There was a staff lounge also in the project that was relocated in order to make room for a larger weight room for PE. So there were, I believe the TV and the refrigerator are associated with the staff lounge.
Okay, thank you.
Director Potts.
When was this project supposed to be done? Because I thought it was supposed to be done like February.
Yes.
And it's not done yet.
Yes, it was occupied in February. There were some problem with the steel skin on the exterior that had to be reordered by the contractor. It's not a cost to the district, but it was a delay in getting the exterior finished.
Is that for the marquee sign or whatever that's out there?
Right, in that vicinity on the front of the addition. Some of the skin for the exterior of the building had to be reordered.
And can you tell me, I had some parents email me. Can you tell me, are there going to be any window coverings? Because the exposure to the, what would that be? The north side of the office is just pure, it's all glass.
Window coverings as in blinds or drapes or something like that?
Something stylish, I assume. I don't know.
If you don't mind, I'll do some research and answer your question for you directly.
Director Beck.
I have two questions. One, basically, we're bundling some other things that needed to get done into this project in order to save costs. Is that right? Like the TV and the water bottle filler and things like that?
The staff lounge was being relocated, and so there was a new TV, a refrigerator in that area. There was equipment for the expanded weight room. Well, that's not part of this change order. This change order is a list of miscellaneous things that were kind of buttoning up the project, and were tasked to the general contractor that was already on site in order to get them cleaned up as expeditiously as possible.
Okay. My second question is it not possible when somebody says, hey, I want to put this addition on here or something like that, to just say, take it down to City Hall or whatever, or call up the city and say, is this something that's going to potentially involve code issues or changes before you even bring it to us?
We have to provide the city with some preliminary plans in order for them to evaluate whether or not certain code triggers, thresholds will be met.
And we have to approve it before that.
So it's, yes, you are required by Iowa code to approve 95% plans and specifications. We have to be fairly complete with plans and specifications to submit to the city for plan review in order for them to know what they're reviewing.
All right, thank you.
Any more discussion? I gotta say, I'm pretty disturbed over this. And I think Director Beck's last question about bundling this, and it seems like we've bundled up an extra $1 million, or maybe not $1 million, but 700 and some thousand into this project, right? To meet a code requirement that we hadn't anticipated and that the city kind of put on us after the fact. Am I reading all that right?
Yes, there was some belief by the architect and your staff that this addition was not a sufficient amount of square feet to trigger the requirement to upgrade the entire building with a fire sprinkler system.
Okay, and I understand that. And and I think that the city and the district are trying to work together in a lot of areas, but this sounds like it sounds quite different. And it feels like we're always the ones that get stuck paying the bill, and we have to I'm trying to think of a proper word, but if we have to comply with kind of whatever they say, and we don't have basically any say in it, is that kind of correct also?
I think the relationship with the building official and with the fire marshal has been a very cooperative one, and I think the city actually has been pretty generous over the years. This is one of the times when they believed that the threshold was met and the fire sprinkler system must be installed, and we brought that to you, I don't know how much, year or more ago, and said this is going to be an additional cost in order to get this secure entry and to get the office off the second floor and all of that kind of stuff. And it had long been a problem at Sudlow.
And I understand, but when this happens occasionally, like I say, it feels to me like we don't have that cooperative relationship that you speak of. And then when I see this and I'm wondering about the bundling, and I'm thinking maybe we should change our process so that we don't bundle that and we say, oh, by the way, here's an extra project for $700 and some thousand that we have to, the board then has to approve separately to comply with the city's wishes. And we have discussed in the past as well some other way of negotiating or disagreeing, and there has to be a way for us to disagree with the city. We cannot always simply comply with what they say. If they had looked at this originally and said, well, here's what all the additional costs might be or probably will be, maybe we could have changed the design. I'm very frustrated. I just wanted to register that. I'll talk later about civil rights, because that's a whole nother issue. Is there any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
No.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We have a couple of discussion items. First is the power purchase agreement proposal. Superintendent Tate.
Thank you. We need to keep talking about solar. We're going to talk about power purchase agreements tonight, and another meeting we'll talk about purchasing our own solar, and so we can sort of investigate separately, and then eventually we'll come to a recommendation to you. So Mr. Maloney has prepared us a discussion paper, and why don't you just talk a little bit and ask questions and discussion among the board.
Yes, I've tried to provide you with a discussion paper that kind of highlighted a list of bullets that are all of the different things we know that influence the potential to have these solar arrays installed that would save general fund money and could be installed using a power purchase agreement that would not cost the district any capital money. What I have found, and we have been working on this for over 2 years now, it's a pretty complicated transaction. There are an awful lot of variables involved. The proposed kilowatt hour rates that we have been offered in these various arrangements for power purchase agreements are only somewhat slightly less than Mid-American's regulated rate. So we would get, depending upon which particular package or combination of packages we might take, somewhere between 50,000, maybe 100,000 a year, best case, in general fund savings for having made a 20-year commitment to purchase the solar generated power from by the use of a power purchase agreement. We were asked by you to look at every possible option that would save general fund money, and this would save a little bit year to year starting first year. After the 20 years and the district owns the array outright, the potential is that the savings might be upwards of $1 million a year at rates upwards of 9-10 cents that we might see 20 years hence. We have projected what Mid-American's rates might be for the coming 10 years. Mid-American staff, and thank them for being with us again tonight, has been very helpful. Mid-American only projects out 10 years what their rates might be. We have used U.S. Energy Information Administration data to project the second 10 years based on their data for Iowa. And Mid-America can't offer us concurrence on that projection, only on the first 10 years that we have agreed on. There are still uncertainties about the what's called the true up date, the April 30th, when your extra credits that you've built up when you've generated more than you've used, they are in a bank and then they get trued up. On true up day, we don't get paid as much as it cost us to generate. So the goal is to design the system so you don't have credits remaining on April 30th so that you've used them all up. And that would be a function of designing the individual systems. One of the other things, and I want to use Eisenhower as the example right now, the proposal is to have a ground-mounted array at Eisenhower, and I can tell you that right now we have conflicts between the Y, the city, and others for use of soccer fields. We have more people wanting to use soccer fields at Eisenhower than we have soccer fields available. And so we're having to work with folks and say, well, you're going to have to figure out how to share here because there's just not enough to go around for the programs that our partners want to offer. And if we put an array on Eisenhower, we would have to relocate some soccer fields, perhaps lose one. There are, I believe, 6 or 7 fields of various sizes there. So there are a lot of programs. And in any case where they're ground mounted, they take up a lot of space. There are a few places where they would not interfere with current or future planned school activities. There are other, Hayes is another good example. Hayes is one of our smallest campuses. And if we give up any green space for solar arrays, that would be play fields that necessarily are given up. So while there are potential cost savings to the general fund and no capital investment by the district, there are also other costs that would be incurred and impacts on campuses and so forth. So I didn't want to go and read the list of things, but rather have the opportunity for the board to discuss the costs and benefits and the things that you'd like weighed in us formulating a recommendation, whether we bring to you a recommendation to consider entering into a power purchase agreement or after our next discussion we'll talk about buying them outright, and I'll create a similar list of the cost benefits and so forth of using our capital funds to buy solar arrays in order to generate general fund savings. But tonight we wanted to focus on the power purchase agreements, and you've had multiple work sessions at committee of the whole, multiple discussion items over the last couple of years. Those of you who have been on the board that long and those of you who most recently joined have also had some discussion previously of these alternatives. So with that, I'll take any questions or want to entertain your discussion about cost and benefits of solar PPA.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Director Beck.
Can you just remind us why we can't have roof-mounted solar arrays?
We can have roof-mounted solar arrays. The complexity we get into is disassembling and reassembling them when roof replacement takes place. On most of our buildings have multiple roof segments, all of which don't get replaced at the same time. And so if we put a bunch of arrays on roof, first we have to determine that the roof has the structural capacity to hold up the load. They have to be designed for wind load, so there's some engineering costs and so forth that goes into it. Then we have to predict whether or not this array will need to be disassembled, reassembled in order to re-roof, and we have to add that cost, or I should say subtract that cost from the projected savings.
Any, Director Beck? Okay. All right, Director DeSalvo.
I have quite a few questions about the bullet points we were provided. Is that okay? My first question, I'm going to go right to the back, one of the bullets that you talked about, the urgency. I think you said current tax incentives are scheduled to end in 2018, and any project approved must have installation complete prior to December 31st, 2018. So today I just Googled solar tax credits just to see what it said. Not that I didn't trust what you said, but I've been hearing conflicting information about that deadline. So what I found today in looking at newsenergyage.com, Congress extends the solar tax credit was the website I went to. It just says the federal ITC, the tax credit was originally established by the Energy Act of 2005, was set up to expire at the end of 2007. Series of extensions pushed the expiration date back to the end of 2016, but experts believe that an additional 5-year extension would bring the solar industry to its full maturity. Thanks to the spending bill that Congress passed in late December 15, the tax credit is now available to homeowners, blah, 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 in some form through 2021. Here are the specifics. 2016 to 2019, the tax credit remains at 30% of the cost of the system. This means that in 2017, you can still get a major discounted price for your solar panel. They reference 2017 because I believe that's the date of the article, but I would just like to point out that it says through 2019. So I don't feel like we're pressured to make this decision and have them all in by the end of this year. 2020, owners of new residential and commercial solar can deduct 26% of the cost of the system from their taxes. 2021, owners of the new residential and commercial solar can deduct 22%. 2022 onwards. Additionally, in previous years, owners of new solar systems could not claim the tax credit unless their system was operational. Now, the legislation allows them to claim it as soon as the construction of the system is complete, as long as it is operational by December 31st, 2023. So I feel like we talk about this and there's always a sense of urgency. We got to make this decision because our vendors want to take advantage of these tax credits. So that's why I looked this up today, and I'm feeling that I would like more information. We're going to share a lot, and I appreciate that, but I think we need a whole lot more information before we can make informed decisions of how we proceed to go forward. A couple other questions, if I can go on with the bullets. So,
Unless, did you have any response, Mr. Malone?
I would only say that it is our proposers in their proposals who say this pricing is if this is installed by
and that was
December
my concern,
31st.
because I'm afraid that perhaps they're saying that that's why I Googled it, because I was hearing conflicting information. So I obviously don't trust Google, but this came from a federal website, so I trust what it's telling me.
Which is on Google.
So the post PPA period, 2021 and beyond, ongoing maintenance, capital improvements, we have to consider those going forward if we go with the PPA, and then at the end of the years we become the owners of these things. And a concern that I have is they're going to be dinosaurs at that time. I'm afraid after 20 years, I just don't know what we'll be left with. But then the burden will be ours, 100% responsibility, right?
Yes, there is an annual degradation of the generating capacity of these panels inherent in the technology. That is taken into account, and we have asked each of the proposers to give us their best projection of what the ongoing operations and maintenance costs would be. So we do have those numbers to take into consideration.
And I believe that we had sent you out to do an RFP. That was completed. Have we gotten responses? Is that what you're going to share with us?
Yes, we have gotten responses from multiple companies with multiple different proposals.
Sure. And I know that we had talked about doing the retro commissioning, and we had quite a discussion a couple weeks back about approving that for Central High School. And I thought we had done some work at West High. Can you provide a status of where that process is at?
Yes, at West High, we have retrofitted all the lighting in the building with LEDs. We have done some controls upgrades, some replacement of equipment. The retro commissioning process was completed about December of last year. The year-to-year change in energy consumption at West High School for March and April of 2018 versus March and April of 2017 is a 20% reduction.
And that's just based on us getting an audit, us going out and doing what they recommended we do, and now we're seeing 20%.
Yes, it was 21% in one month and 19% point something the other. So an average of 20% for those 2 months, which is the first year-to-year comparison we have had.
So what I would like to see, and this is just my personal opinion, now that we have that building, are all the changes done? Are we complete at West with what they've recommended?
Well, we're complete with the energy efficiency measures, the primary recommendations. We have a project to replace gym air handlers and upgrade controls next summer that is underway that will also create energy savings. And that's, we had already known that the gym air handlers needed to be replaced, so.
As part of my, and I think I requested this a while back, after these audits are done, what I would like to see is, we look at West High and we say, okay, now that we're sitting much better, more improved in our energy efficiency, okay, what can solar do now? Now we compare apples to apples, sort of, in that this is where we're at now, as efficient as we can come close to, versus now this provider is saying this is what it would cost. That will help me make an informed decision of, is this the right thing to do? And talk to the fire department before we do any, just kidding, sorry. I had to throw that in there. Let's see. Dismantling and disposal. So another cost that I obviously hard to project after 20 years, but I'm a little concerned about, again, being left with something that we may not have value in at some period in time, and we have to figure out then what we do with them. Obviously, we can dismantle them, but how do you dispose of them? That would be a cost for consideration for future boards to think about. Do we have performance guarantees in the PPA related to output availability?
Well, we haven't gotten to the point of negotiating a final contract with any of the proposals. They have given us a projected rate of degradation of productivity, and we would expect to have some warranty, some guarantee, some assurance that the productivity would remain at some predicted level.
Sure. Okay. Do we have any risk with future tax law changes?
I have attempted to cover that in the RFP to say that we will not, that if there are future changes in personal property tax or other things, that will be the investor's problem and not the school districts, that we're going to pay X amount per kilowatt hour in each of the 20 years, and that's what we pay, and what happens on your side of the transaction is not our problem.
Okay. I think that's all that I had related to that. I would like to also know, I know at one point we had different plans. You showed us plans, gosh, probably a year ago or so, with some had roof mounts, some had mounts at the ground level at different schools, and it sounds like some of that may have changed. And so as part of this process, that would be something of interest to me too, the location. I think it's critical that we don't, as much as possible, don't take away soccer fields and such. And just lastly, on I think someone mentioned in the open forum tonight that this is a very big investment, and we're looking at shuttering a school. and now making a huge investment. And to me, that obviously it's different buckets. It comes from different sources, and we all understand that. But I think making sure the public has clear understanding of where these monies are coming from, and that these are different buckets of things that we're trying to save and things that we're trying to recoup by doing some of this. That's very important. I think when someone sees, we're doing a lease for a small group of students, well, that money comes from grants. People don't understand that. So that is very important to me.
Yes, and I think just for the record, the power purchase agreement approach is the district spends zero capital dollars, and the savings comes from purchasing the power, and it's a direct general fund savings. What I have found is it's not as grand an amount first year as we might have hoped, but it is a direct general fund savings at no capital cost.
And so I just want to make sure that's clear, because I think Director DeSalvo, she described a huge investment, and I think, can you clarify, is there a huge investment on the part of the district
No.
in this PPA?
The investment is made by a private investor. The private investor recoups their investment by selling us the electricity generated over the 20-year term of the power purchase agreement. The cost per kilowatt hour of that must be less than Mid-American's rate today and projected rate in order for the transaction to make sense.
And that's what I'm looking for, that I would like a comparison to be able to do that. And have we done the audits of all of our schools? Or
No, those are underway, and you'll recall from, I don't know, something more than a year ago, the discussion about these energy efficiency measures was those had a better return on investment than the solar investment. That was the reason to do the retro commissioning, to do the retrofitting of lighting and so forth, because there was a higher return on investment for that. That, however, does take our capital dollars to do. And we have seen the example of West, where it's about a 20% energy savings.
so what are your thoughts right now?
My thoughts from the beginning were that if we could get a PPA that made sense, that we invest no money, and the projected kilowatt hour rates year to year to year are enough below Mid-American, and we would still have some Mid-American at each of these campuses, that the benefit overcomes the risk, the uncertainty, any risk you want to name, then that might make sense. And it would generate immediate general fund savings, and that's what the whole discussion was about. And so if we bring to you one of the proposals that we've recently got and say, well, we think it will save $50,000 or $100,000 a year, but you're entering into a long-term commitment and there are a number of uncertainties, does the projected general fund savings overcome any other doubts that you might have about the wisdom of entering into a power purchase agreement?
And just one concluding comment, and then I'll stop. But I to be honest, I have concerns, in a lot of the discussion we had tonight of unforeseen things that come up. And if it sounds too good to be true, it feels too good to be true. I'm a very cautious person anyway, but I worry that we will get into something that will end up costing us money or not bringing us the savings that we're anticipating. And I'm concerned with that. And I don't have anything to prove that different to me at this time. That's what I'm seeking, is show me some number. I'm a numbers person. Show me some numbers, show me some facts to help me make an informed decision. And I wouldn't say just me. I hope I speak on behalf of this board that we need information so that we can make informed decisions before we get stuck with change orders and change requests and all these unforeseen, unanticipated things. No fault of anyone, but I just don't want that to happen with a project of this magnitude.
Yes, this would not be a construction contract, so we wouldn't have change orders. If we bring you a proposal, you will see a side-by-side rate comparison with Mid-American's projected rate and the proposer's projected rate for the entire 20 years, projected rate of consumption at each side, all of that information. We've spreadsheeted until we're spreadsheeted out on it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Director Beck.
One other question. Is it possible, so given the the limited amount of green space at some of our campuses, if we enter into something like this, are we, and forgive me for maybe not remembering details, is it possible to put solar at campuses where it is feasible and not where it's not feasible? For example, a place with small green space, we just decide it's not worth using up the green space for, but we could still go ahead with the project somewhere else.
Yes, and we've spoken with each of the proposers about exactly that, about if we decide that we're going to pull 2 of these campuses out of your proposal, does that change your calculation? Because there are some where we know that we wouldn't want to do what was proposed. There are a combination of ground mounts, roof mounts. Some are strictly ground mount. One was strictly roof mount. Some's a combination. So it's figuring out what's the best combination to see if one of them makes sense to bring to you with a recommendation.
Any other discussion?
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
I guess you've heard from Director Beck concern about green space. It worries me that we're willing to give up green space that's vital to our kids and their activities. Well, I guess I have to lean forward here. I've seen us spend huge amounts of money, to me anyway, on getting rid of green space, and that took the availability away from our kids being able to use it. A fine example of that is the rock garden at JB. I understood that we had to have more parking space, but we decided for the community we were going to put in a decorative stone, I don't know what to describe that as, for the community to use, which I don't see people using. But I guarantee you, if there had been green space there that came at a much less of a cost, that kids and neighborhood kids would have been using that space. But yet we invested $100,000 in making a rock garden. And that concerns me when you're talking about whether it's Eisenhower, that we have all these multiples of soccer fields. And I can remember my kids playing soccer at Eisenhower. And basically, solar may take that away because those savings are more important than what our kids gain from having that type of opportunity. So I hope that if you go forward with this, that there are some places where it just will not work. The schools were not designed space-wise to have not only the playground or the green space, but also have solar as well. It will probably diminish both if we try to put it there. So I would be looking for those places that it may be possible without infringing upon the great facilities that we have. They are impeccable compared to many other places. But we can change that by shrinking it for sake of $1 more. So I hope that's something we think about as we go. Thank you.
Anything else? Director Gosa.
I will say myself personally, I was all for the solar and everything in the beginning, but the growing trend of all these unforeseen things that keep popping up magically and change orders and all that, and I know you said it's not construction related, but okay, they're putting a roof deal on and then they put a hole in the roof or something, and then or they don't do something to code, then we're getting hit there. I mean, it just seems a growing trend that either we're not doing our due diligence or whatever the case may be. So it makes me really hesitant on this now with the growing trend, the way we're trending towards. So I'd have to see a lot more info now. I mean, I was totally sold on it before, saving in the general fund, but we're always getting taken to the woodshed, it seems like, so much. Every meeting there's a change order for something or something else, and then we get into this and then we wind up with extra costs that well, we weren't supposed to pay for that, but now all of a sudden we got to pay for that because of something. They were digging in something, they hit a sewer line, then that's our responsibility and this and that. So it makes me very, very cautious with the way that everything's been going now.
Anything else? I got a couple of thoughts. I mean, one of the things when we talk about unforeseen, and you said that Mid-American will not project out 20 years. Is that correct?
Yes,
On
they're
pricing?
projecting out 10 years.
They'll give you a 10-year, and is that a guarantee, or is that just a projection?
No, that's their current projection of what they expect their
do
rates
they
will be.
have a guarantee on price per kilowatt for any period of time?
I think it would be fair to say the guarantee is the current approved rate by the IUB is
Current
the current
is
approved
what
rate.
it is.
And beyond that, would they have a projection of what they expect that goes out 10 years?
And then you indicated in your paper, I think, that the actual increases have exceeded what Mid-American projections have been. Is that correct?
There are a variety of different fees that are associated with the bill in addition to the kilowatt hour change. Over any given period of time, the actual increase in rates is I think it's fair to say the actual increase in rates that we expect based on the information we have may be more than what Mid-American predicts or what U.S. Energy Administration, Information Administration predicts.
Okay. And when you get these PPAs, again, I just want to clarify for myself, I think I've understood that you've said that there's no capital investment on our part.
No. We pay only for the energy
Okay.
that we consume.
And when you get these PPAs, are they not only projecting, but are they guaranteeing a cost per kilowatt for each of those 20 years?
Yes.
So, so it's not exactly an apples to apples. We have in one case somebody that's willing to guarantee the cost for 20 years, and in another case they'll guarantee it for current conditions.
Well, they project it based on the best information they have.
But they won't guarantee it. I'm just saying that an apples to apples comparison is very difficult when we're demanding, if we demand a performance guarantee on that equipment for 20 years, but we don't have any expectation other than projections from the other provider. It just seems incredibly unequal, I guess I would say. One thing that you haven't really talked about is leases. Is that something else that you're going to talk about?
I was not prepared to do that now, and I believe my recollection was that we were advised that a lease back was not something that we were legally able to do. You recall that conversation, Marcia, from a couple of months ago now? We asked Dick exactly that question because we had a proposal for a lease back, and we met with that group and Dick a couple of times and concluded that a lease back was not permissible for a municipal corporation in Iowa.
Yeah, and I recall that, but I thought he was a little bit less convicted maybe than you are. One of the things that strikes me about this, and the board has expressed tonight, I think a general more than caution, and perhaps I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it feels like the board has more of a sense that this is something that it should not be doing. And the reason I mention this is that perhaps in the past the board has expressed that it thought this was a good idea. It thought that energy conservation was a good idea. And I think that the district has dedicated a few $1 million to solar in the next few years. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes.
Right. And so I just want to express that I know that you are spending a lot of time on this. You've got some of your employees spending a lot of time. You've got a lot of suppliers that are spending a lot of time on this. And so I'll have to consider with the agenda committee even, and I might put in a request, but if the board is pretty much convinced that it doesn't want to do it, then I'd like to go ahead and maybe stop it before we just waste a lot of time. So does that make sense to you?
That was the purpose of this very discussion, to gather all of the board's concerns about the use of green space, about the uncertainty, about the amount of savings, all of those things. The very purpose of this discussion was to get your sentiments and for you to be prepared to make an informed decision on a recommendation should one be brought forward, or there may be ample evidence that there's no recommendation to bring.
Right, but I think what I've heard is that there may be so much information required that it would take 20 years to get it, and by then it's, why are you going to do it? The other thing I want to address, though, that hasn't been discussed tonight, I think, is the general fund savings. I think that the board, and I think that every board member is very concerned about that, and I think that my perspective is that we should be doing everything we can to preserve the general fund dollars, and I think that the budget reductions that this board is going to go through and that the district's going to go through over the next 3 years at least are phenomenal and are going to be it's going to be really distressing, I think. And when I look at those dollars and I say maybe we can save one position or two positions, the 50 to 100 grand seems like a small amount, but if that is a couple of teacher positions or otherwise, to me that's very meaningful. And so I just wanted to express at least that I think savings are important, but I'll leave it at that. So is there any additional discussion? Director Gosa.
So you talked about the savings to the general fund. I get that, but every time we have a change order, that puts another project that could be saving us more money behind. So I mean so I try to consider that too, but I mean, change orders are running rampant, and that costs other projects to fall behind in the 10-year plan and stuff like that. So if we had to put this project off because we had to go in and pay more money for this for whatever reason, now you just set that project back, and then there's savings that we could have had too. So that affects it too, and that's where I'm coming from at it, because the way you kind of presented it was that I'm not really in it for the general savings or whatever, but at the same time I'm trying to look ahead to every time we have to delay this, that, or the other, that's money we're losing too, is the way I'm looking at it and where I'm coming from with what I had said.
I just want to clarify, and I think you've clarified a few times, there are no expenditures from the district for the solar projects through a PPA, correct?
That's correct.
And so therefore, the way I understand it, there could be no change orders if we aren't spending any money. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have no responsibility for the construction, installation, or maintenance of the systems during the PPA.
Right. So if we can't have change orders, then we wouldn't be spending additional money on change orders because they couldn't exist. Is that correct?
They wouldn't exist. Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Superintendent Tate.
I would hope we'd go ahead with the next discussion where we're talking about us buying the solar arrays, and therefore we get the entire benefit. We buy them with save money, install them with save money, and then the savings go to the general fund. And yes, there's downsides to it, but I hope that you will listen to it and consider it. And yes, we might lose some green space, but folks, it's $20 million in the next 5 years. We're going to have to do a lot of things we don't like, and at least the other thing is we've been promising the community we're being green and we're being responsible, and I think you still need to have that consideration. So I hope we'll go forward with that discussion.
I appreciate your comments, Superintendent Tate, but in that Mr. Maloney is looking for a little bit of consensus here, I would appreciate a little bit of discussion on that. And I don't want to drag out this part of the meeting, but do you want to continue thinking about solar, or are you committed enough that it really isn't something that should we have a discussion on not doing any additional work? Director Beck.
I think we should have the discussion that's scheduled for, what is it?
Committee of the whole, 7.
Yeah, I mean, no harm in discussing. I haven't decided one way or the other. Not enough information.
Anybody else? Director DeSalvo.
I just have to do one quick plug, and we're 45% green energy right now. Mid-American Energy produces 45% of their energy by wind generation. We are the largest wind producer, privately owned, in the country. So the green aspect is we are there. Our goal is that we will be 100% green within the next 10 years, I think it is. So we are green already, and that's a good thing. I would support, I want to, believe it or not, I do want to look at what it's going to take to purchase, but that decision has to be informed. And I feel like we are being pressured to make a quick decision, and we're not getting details that we need. Obviously, President Johansson has said many times tonight, we don't have to invest any capital money if we do a PPA. And I understand that, but my fear is the hidden things that we don't know of. And I don't expect you're going to know them. But I fear that we are going to run into that $1,000 sprinkler system that the city comes in and says, or $1 million sprinkler system, forgive me, that the city says, oh, by the way, now that you're doing these roof mounts, you're going to have to change this and that and this. That's my concern, that we're going to get into something that looks great and then ends up costing us. And we're not getting the savings that we're hoping to obtain. So I don't want you, I know you've done a lot of work already, but I can't even imagine just hearing you talk about the responses from this RFP, how complex they are. And if we're talking about this building looks good and that one doesn't look good, that's going to take a lot of time and research, and not something that we can move too quickly, and that I won't move too quickly without information helping me to make that very informed decision. Because to me, we've made decisions quickly and they've cost us, and I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening again.
Anybody else? Director Hayes.
I pretty much agree with Director DeSalvo and Gosa. It sounds great, but the unforeseen is something that I'm kind of concerned with.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I guess you got what you got.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we have one additional discussion item. Director DeSalvo, do you have a sense for how long that's going to take?
5 minutes, if that.
Why don't we continue with our meeting then? Why don't you lead us in that discussion?
It's hot in here. Now I'm getting hot. Clearly, Superintendent Tate has lost his voice because he has been speaking for weeks and begging for weeks our legislator to try and assist him in helping provide security, proper security for our schools. What he has been asking our legislators and the governor is to allow him authority to use the reserve funds to add additional staff so that we can have the resources that he has in his plan to keep our students safe. We cannot use that money, obviously. We can't use save money, PEPAL money, the funds we've talked about tonight, to pay for salaries. The legislators They said that they were giving some authority to use Save and Pepple to do building structure, video, things like that we need to do. But what we're looking at is getting money to add additional staff to keep our students and our staff safe. So Ralph and I have been talking about it. I'm sorry, President Johansson and I have been talking what we can do to help Dr. Tate, because he emailed literally every single legislator. He emailed the governor, and I think you got 3 responses, if that. And so we have to take this very seriously. He's trying to be proactive. We're trying to do things before we have an event, unfortunate, that we don't want to happen. And if we can do everything within our power to prevent that, that's what he's trying to do. So we're talking about how we as a board or as a community can help him in that effort. I'm not exactly sure what the right answer is. I fired off some emails, and I think I did a plea myself that Mary drafted quickly, and I think I got 1 or 2 responses. I think as a board, we really need to figure out ways that we can support Dr. Tate in this effort, because it's critical to the safety of our community and our students and our staff. I'm not sure what those answers are, and I guess I'm looking for this board to help guide us in how we get these changes made, how we get this legislative session to listen to us. They're not out yet. Their per diem ended last week, so they're working for free right now, but I'm sure they're scrambling. We're trying very hard to get their attention, but I fear that they will get in what they need to this session and then go home. That doesn't mean that our work should stop because they're out of session. I think we need to press them and continue to press them. This is an election year. I've said this before, but I'm looking for input to help our legislative committee move forward and ideas of how we can shake some people up and make some things happen that we need to have happen soon.
Why don't you go ahead and lead the discussion? No, seriously. I mean, go ahead.
What else do you want me to say?
I mean, call on
I'm
the board
sorry.
member.
Director, I've never had to do this. Director Beck. I kind of like this being in
Thank
charge.
you. Have the royal we meaning you or Dr. Tate, had personal sit-down conversations with our local legislators where you said, this is what I want to do? Robbie Smith and Monica Kurth and all the Phyllis Thede and all the people who are representing us locally?
I had a call into Phyllis, and I know that President Johansson talked to Robbie Smith. He said things were flying around so quickly right now that they were reading the emails. They just didn't have the time to respond to us. But I think that's a very good point, that if we have an in with anyone, or even if we try to call them, leave messages to express our urgency and our request that we want to use those reserve funds to add some staff. But I agree. I'll write that down.
When is the next legislative forum?
Well, that's a good question, because we weren't going to have one in May, and I think perhaps we need to have one in May. Just because the session is ended, I don't think that should stop our efforts. So Mary and I will work on that. Right, Mary? God bless you. We'll get one planned for early in May. It's a little crazy right now with everything, but. Director Gosa.
So like you said, it's an election year. They're running for re-election. They're hosting parties, trying to fundraise. Go hit them up right there in front of everybody. Shame them. I do it all the time. There's no shame in my game. I let them know how I feel.
Okay, so I need you to keep doing that then.
You tell me not to. You told me to be quiet the whole time we were at the Capitol.
We'll talk later. But how do you know about these events? Like, I don't run in your same circle. So how does one just?
They're on
are they
Facebook. They're everywhere.
If you sign up for either Scott County Democrats or Scott County Republicans, join the Facebook group, you'll find out about all the fundraising events for everybody.
We can crash their parties then, right? Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ideas? President Johansson.
Thank you. This is such a serious issue, and I think we all think about it probably every day. I know that Superintendent Tate is dedicating resources, and he mentioned earlier that he had a committee that got together and spent a bunch of time evaluating things, and I think all of that is good. I think that the legislature, and I think they're really concerned about state revenues too, and so I think that's probably part of why we haven't heard much. There was a discussion on one of the emails that we got that said that there was a SAVE bill. I haven't seen the bill, so I don't know. And the legislator seemed to say that should be enough. I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was something like that. I think that SAVE, though, providing that kind of flexibility, it also causes us, if we were going to do it, to take money away from the original intended purpose, which we all know that we have at least $400 million of infrastructure requirements that we should be getting to. One of the points that the superintendent has made, and I think that our legislative advocacy committee has talked about for years, and that the superintendent, in fact, trying to think of the year now, I think it was 2015 when he went ahead and said, this is wrong, the inequality and inequity. I'm going to spend some of these reserve funds, even though I'm not allowed to legally do it. And I think that the superintendent has some additional strategies, that maybe there are some other ways to get it. But gosh, I think this board, somehow we've got to do something, and I don't know what it is either, and that's I appreciate you bringing this to the table and discussing it, and I don't know whether we need a special board meeting. I don't know what it is, where maybe we just discuss it, but there has to be a way. So I just wanted to say, you gotta ask her.
Superintendent Tate.
The two recommendation we had is use the SAVE funds, but the new bill, and I'm not sure the governor has signed it specifically, does not let you use for personnel or training. You cannot. The other says there's some flexibility on the at-risk and modified allowable growth, but that's what we're using for our at-risk youth. I don't want to put their well-being against security. So neither one of those work.
Director Hayes.
You had also mentioned that they weren't getting in their emails busy as they were. Would it help if we maybe called?
I think that's what kind of where Director Beck was going to, that I call. I think Monica Kurth might be a good one to get a hold of, and I'll just start. I have a message into Phyllis Thiede, Henry Marquardt, just old friends that may be able to help with something. So I think that's a good idea if we all just call them and just say, look, you've received these emails from Superintendent Tate, and you know, we don't want you to have this problem that we're fearing could occur and could be on your hands because you wouldn't help us, and we tried, and we have lots of emails to show. So, you know, help us.
I remember at one point Cindy Winkler said it would be easier for her to contact her on her cell phone versus the phone there, because she doesn't always hear it.
Yeah. Do we have? Well, we have. I could share that with all of you if you'd like. If that would help you, I would be happy to email their information to you. Okay.
Hey, would you please?
I sure will. Anyone else? Director Gosa?
Another thing, if you want to discuss this, I would like do it way early in the meeting before all the cameras and stuff leave, so that they actually catch it on there, because they like to tuck out of here after like the hot topics pop up. Just get it out there.
Thank you. Superintendent Tate.
I put together a team that I'm calling the District Security Team, and it consists of Andy Nyrick, who is our liaison with the police, the two associate superintendents, and someone I brought on board as an advisor, David Struckman, and he is a 44-year a veteran of the police force, and we'll meet every other week, and we will look at all the best practices and things that happen. And unfortunately, the book that we're reading, all of us, is Countering the Mass Shooter Threat. That's what we're doing. That's where we're spending our time, and we've got to do it.
President Johansson.
I was thinking about this book and the committee, and I just wanted to thank the superintendent for the leadership that you are providing, and that all of those on that committee are helping in making sure that our whole district and our buildings are safe, as safe as they can be. So I just want to say thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Is that it? Okay, thank you very much for that. Are there any administrative reports?
Just one, Mr. President. I have a letter that I sent to President Johansson on April 10th, and we decided tonight would be the best time to read it. Dear President Johansson, I intend to retire on June 30th, 2019. My motivation for retirement comes from the desire to progress to the next phase of my life. I have worked as a full-time professional for 58 years. I'm ready to stop while I can still enjoy life. Serving the Davenport Community School District has been my greatest honor and privilege. During the next 14 months, I will continue to give my all on behalf of our students. Sincerely, Dr. Arthur Tate. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much for that. And there will be time for plenty of thought and discussion later. Are there any board requests? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Is there one? Director Beck, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. This meeting is adjourned.
Doctor.